Developing right now on Morning News Now, escalation ahead in the Middle East. This morning, a new wave of explosions rocking Iran's capital, with the White House warning Congress. An even bigger barrage of strikes is imminent.
This regime is at hand, and the goal is to make sure they can never be a threat like they were before.
When there's no set plan, when you can't hear day after day, we're going to do this, 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 and this, and these are the reasons why, you end up with an endless war.
Meanwhile, Iran begins mourning its slain supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei as it continues its retaliation campaign against U.S. and Israeli targets. Plus, we are learning more about the American troops killed in action. We will bring you the latest. Also developing this morning, the votes are in for the first primaries of this year's midterm elections in Texas. Four-term Republican incumbent Senator John Cornyn now headed to a runoff against State Attorney General Ken Paxton to determine who will face Democrat James Tallarico in a high-stakes Senate race. More on the Texas-sized showdown that could shift the balance of power in Washington. Plus, convicted, a Georgia father found guilty on all charges, including second-degree murder in connection with a school shooting allegedly carried out by his son. How the rare verdict could set a precedent for other cases nationwide. And reducing risk, new research on breast cancer shows more than a quarter of cases could actually be prevented. We will break down the findings and the simple lifestyle changes that could save lives. Some really important information there for a lot of us.
Good morning. Good to have you with us. Another busy morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thank you for starting your Wednesday with us. We are going to begin this hour with the ongoing war in the Middle East. Several Arab countries are on high alert this morning as Iran continues to launch new retaliatory strikes across the region. Yesterday, a drone attack near the American consulate in Dubai left parts of the building engulfed in flames. Authorities say there were no injuries. The U.S. has shut down its embassies in Saudi Arabia, Beirut, and Kuwait as the State Department urges U.S. citizens to leave the region immediately.
The U.S. and Israel are still conducting offensive operations of their own. The Israeli military says it's now operating on the ground inside Lebanon following new airstrikes on Beirut and Tehran. U.S. Central Command says nearly 2,000 targets have been struck in Iran so far, while hundreds of people have died across the Middle East. Iran's Red Crescent says more than 800 people have been killed, mostly in Iran. We're also learning more about the first U.S. service members who were killed in this conflict. Looking forward, President Trump is acknowledging for the first time that he is uncertain what will happen next, as he and his top advisors scramble to defend his decision. We are expecting to hear from top Pentagon officials later this morning. Let's get right to it with our team of experts and correspondents tracking the latest news both at home and abroad. We're going to begin with NBC News correspondent Matt Bodner, who is in London with the very latest. Matt, good to have you with us. Let's start with just basically what we're learning right now about these retaliatory strikes from Iran ramping up across the region. What have been its latest targets?
Morning, Joe. So basically right now we're seeing the Iranians continue to engage in counterstrikes. The latest round of targets have focused heavily on U.S. infrastructure. U.S. embassies appear to be a target. There was, of course, that drone attack near the U.S. embassy in Dubai. And so basically now we're seeing the U.S. State Department prepare for, or at least get ready for the potential of additional continued attacks on U.S. embassies throughout the region. We've seen closures in about 14 countries in the Middle East. And orders for the embassies to evacuate non-essential personnel. There's also this great effort now to get Americans out of the region. There's a lot of back and forth on that as to how the U.S. is going to help people get out. Will there be charter flights? And Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been appealing to the media to help get the word out for Americans in the region to basically report where they are so that they can get a handle on this operation.
And Matt, let's talk about these concerns for U.S. citizens in the region. Everything that you just said unfolding around them. The State Department had initially told Americans to evacuate via commercial flights. Many airspaces are closed, though. Airlines canceled flights. There aren't flights to even get on. What is the plan at this point to try to help Americans evacuate safely? And what is the message to people who are stranded in these places?
So we're seeing a variety of messaging. Yesterday, like I said, Marco Rubio saying that they're working on it. They're trying to arrange evacuation flights. Airspace closures, the Secretary of State did say, is the major hurdle at the moment. They can line up as many planes as they want, but the United States directly does not control whether a given country's airspace is open or closed to receive those flights. So they are working through that. We've seen the president suggest that there would be charter flights. And meanwhile, we are seeing reports from Americans stranded in the Middle East that they don't think that they're getting enough help. They're still trying to figure a way out of the situation. But that said, the State Department is claiming that 9,000 Americans have been evacuated from the region, and they're working on about 1,500, 1,600 more that they know of. And again, reiterating that appeal for anyone they don't know of to make their presence in the Middle East known, to see what kind of help is available to them.
Matt, we also know the U.S. has now identified some of the U.S. service members who were killed in this conflict. What are we learning?
So the U.S. says that 6 service members have been killed in the operation so far. We've only seen 4 of them publicly identified. They were all U.S. Army reservists, and the names were Captain Cody A. Cork, Sergeant First Class Noah L. Tietjens, Sergeant First Class Nicole M. Amor, and Specialist Declan J. Cody. The U.S. Army Reserve Command said in a statement that the 4 soldiers were killed in a drone strike on a port in Kuwait. All 4 of them were assigned to the 103rd Sustainment Command based out of Des Moines. The identities of the other 2 service members have not yet been released.
We're going to bring Matt Bradley also into this conversation. Now, Matt, you were actually supposed to join us right at the top of the show. We understand that you were on a roof. You had to evacuate down to a shelter. Walk us through what's happening on the ground there.
Yeah, well, we just heard a warning a little while ago of the typical nature where you get a warning on your phones before you start hearing the sirens. Then we waited for the sirens and we got instead the all clear. Then about 5 minutes later, all of a sudden, we heard no warning and sirens throughout the city. Now, this doesn't happen very often. It has happened in the past. We don't know where this latest attack came from. But the fact that there was no warning means it could have come from Lebanon or a closer location, because normally when we see these missiles taking off from Iran, the IDF is able to offer advanced warning to the people of Israel so that they can seek cover. And only in the past couple of days when we've heard of attacks from Lebanon did we not see any warning. Now, this was a particularly terrifying one because after my team and I got down here to this safe room, we heard very, very close overflights of what sounded like missiles. We don't know whether they were outgoing or whether they were incoming. We have heard missile installations, air defense missile installations in the area around our bureau, so it could have been outgoing, but we did hear what was either impacts or interceptions. And again, we don't know where these came from. We don't know injuries or casualties. This all just happened 5 minutes ago, but we'll probably be able to get you that information fairly soon.
Matt Bradley, we just want to get a sense of the mood there in Israel with the retaliatory strikes from Iran, with the conflict intensifying between Hezbollah and Israel. What has it been like there over the past 24 hours?
Yeah, I mean, over the past 24 hours, it's fair to say that until we saw this, like I said, very, very close attacks or very, very close outgoing, we haven't heard that much more in terms of tempo of these attacks. There were a couple of warnings of sirens, but it seems as though these attacks are kind of thinning out. I'm not exactly sure whether that's because the Iranians no longer have the missile capability. If we had thought that things were kind of coming to an end just a moment ago, well, this latest attack, these latest sirens have definitely woken everybody up.
Matt Bradley, please continue to stay safe. Matt Bodner, thank you for your reporting from London.
Matt Bradley, thank you for joining us despite everything going on there. We now have NBC News military analyst Colonel Steve Warren joining us. Colonel, good morning. Great to have you back on set here with us. I want to start on the issue of oil because it's becoming an increasing conversation around the globe as we see prices spike. But it's all because of this particular region and the Strait of Hormuz. That is where so much of the world's natural gas passes through and where Iran has said it would essentially attack any boat that does pass through that area right now. President Trump has said on Truth Social that the U.S. Navy, though, could escort tankers through the Strait of Hormuz as soon as possible. From a defense standpoint, what are the biggest challenges the Navy would face in a situation like that? How do you see an event like that unfolding?
Probably the most difficult challenge to overcome is responding to the various ways the Iranians can attack a tanker. So they have speedboats packed with explosive. That's one thing that you have to worry about. They have submarines. They have these midget submarines that obviously have all the submarine capabilities that you have to worry about. And of course, and probably most lethal, most important, they have anti-ship missiles, which can be fired from land, can be fired from the air, can be fired from another ship at sea. So a lot of a vast variety of ways the Iranians can sink a tanker.
So we know that the Trump administration yesterday told lawmakers to brace for what they're calling an overwhelming wave of strikes over the coming days. We know we've had these initial strikes. They've taken out the Ayatollah and some of the leadership. What's the focus next? Are they looking at the nuclear sites? Are they looking at the military? What would these strikes focus on?
Yeah, so they're looking at the nuclear sites for sure. They're also looking at the Navy, whatever ships remain floating. But they're also looking across the board. So and the Pentagon's very smart to not telegraph it. They don't want the Iranians to know what's coming next. But some of the options include simply turning up the dial and intensifying the pace or tempo of what they're already doing. That creates confusion amongst the Iranians, creates confusion amongst the leadership. Nobody knows what to do next. It creates massive problems for the enemy. The other thing they could do is focus on something, whether it's nuclear capabilities, ships, or something else. They could pour those resources directly against a specific target set and eliminate it completely.
Let's talk about the new leadership in Iran, what that could look like, but also the threats that they face. The Israeli defense minister has said that there will be, quote, an unequivocal target for elimination for any new leader in Iran. Assuming that they are referring to a leader of the same ideology that could come to power as the prior supreme leader. On the other hand, we've seen our president call on the people of Iran, once bombing stops, to essentially take to the streets and see a popular revolution be what installs a new leader. Do you think something like that is actually feasible? Do you think something like that is actually feasible without U.S. boots on the ground?
Right. Boots on the ground, of course, are the biggest question. And my sense is that the president has no interest in sending significant numbers of U.S. troops into Iran to help topple this current government. Now, the Israelis, in a smart action of psychological operations, have made it clear that any more mullahs or any more clerics or any more leaders from this current regime who become the new overall leader, they'll be immediately targeted. So that kind of makes people not want that job very much, right? Creates more confusion, sows more dissent. So getting the entire regime to topple, that's going to be a tall order.
All right. Colonel Steve Warren, as always, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
As the U.S. enters its fifth day at war with Iran, let's now bring in senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez from the latest out of Washington. Gabe, good morning. Good to have you with us. So we know yesterday during an Oval Office sort of press availability with the German Chancellor Merz there, President Trump walked back what his Secretary of State had been telling reporters about Israel's role in the decision to strike Iran. What exactly did President Trump have to say?
Well, Joe, he didn't just walk it back. He outright rejected it. Now, on Monday, Secretary of State Rubio, when he was briefing the Gang of Eight Plus, he was trying to argue that the reason that the U.S. struck Iran now was because the U.S. knew that Israel was preparing to strike Iran, that they anticipated Iran would retaliate against Israel and the U.S., and that's why the U.S. had to go in now. Now, that led to criticism from some Democrats, especially, who argued that Prime Minister Netanyahu was dragging President Trump into this war. The president was asked by reporters directly about that, and here's how he responded.
I might have forced their hand. You see, we were having negotiations with these lunatics, and it was my opinion that they were going to attack first. They were going to attack. If we didn't do it, they were going to attack first. So if anything, I might have forced Israel's hand. But Israel was ready, and we were ready, and we've had a very, very powerful impact because virtually everything they have has been knocked out now. Their missile count is going way down.
Now, there has been mixed messaging on several levels from the administration. Also, administration officials now saying that regime change is not the ultimate goal here, even though the president earlier over the weekend had said that he urged Iranians to try and topple the regime. The president was asked about what would be the worst case scenario here, and he said potentially finding out in 5 years that whoever took over the Iranian regime was worse than whoever was in place before. Joe and Savannah.
Gabe, you mentioned those comments from the president, and it's still on our screen there, that the president said he might have forced Israel's hand in this war with Iran. Well, Secretary of State Marco Rubio had essentially said the opposite. He was back on Capitol Hill again yesterday to sort of walk back these comments about Israel already planning this attack on Iran, which then forced our hand. Rubio told reporters that the U.S. and Israeli militaries are going to, quote, unleash on Iran, is the word that he used, over the next few days, which really sort of marks this shift in scope and intensity of the attacks. What are lawmakers saying about that, and what are they learning in these security briefings?
Well, Savannah, lawmakers have a lot of questions about the scope of this operation in Iran, especially Democrats, of course. Now, Republicans, by and large, the vast majority of them still supporting the president publicly, although some express skepticism that if this campaign were to widen, they could be wary of mission creep here. But Democrats specifically have been very pointed in their criticism and saying that after hearing the briefings from Secretary Rubio and top administration officials, they're concerned that the Trump administration has no real endgame here, has no real plan for what happens next, and they have concerns about the casualties and also the possibility of American boots on the ground, Joe and Savannah.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez in Washington. Gabe, thank you.
Well, since the start of the war, gas prices here at home have spiked, and the conflict has injected the economy with anxiety. We have senior reporter from Yahoo Finance, Brooke DePalma, joining us here on set for how the markets are reacting this morning. Brooke, good morning. It was a big conversation yesterday, U.S. stocks taking this tumble. First, just give us the latest from Wall Street. What are we seeing in the global markets and today's future? What do we anticipate?
As of right now, all three major indices are set to move higher at today's open, with the Dow, the S&P 500, and the Nasdaq in the green ahead of that market open. But overseas, it's a bit of a different story. The UAE exchanges opened for the first time in 2 days since these strikes began. And what we're seeing there, particularly with the Dubai exchange, is a fall of about 5% as of afternoon trading. And this could be the worst day that we've seen since May of 2022. In addition to that, Asia markets certainly rippling because of the effect of this war as well. Certainly seeing a sell-off there. The Korea exchange down about 12%, and that would be the worst day in decades. But investors here at home are really sort of saying that their fears are sort of assuaged here, tempered back a bit after President Trump did say that he would send that insurance policies as well as, if necessary, the Navy to escort these boats, sort of assuaging fears, but it's not necessarily a long-term solution. And so uncertainty is definitely still on investors' minds.
And when we talk about uncertainty, a lot of folks are looking at their retirement accounts right now, like their 401ks, and they might get a little nervous about that. What's always the best advice when you're looking at something that's more of a long-term investment?
Yeah, well, sources tell me sort of stay the course, keep a calm head, and definitely persist. Hold on to the assets that you have right now. But this is not the first time that investors have seen volatility this year. We've seen volatility not only because of this war with Iran, but also after the latest SCOTUS ruling on those tariffs and also the capture of Nicolas Maduro, the Venezuelan leader. That all caused volatility within the markets. And so this is nothing new that investors are facing. And so experts are certainly saying, keep calm, stay invested, and if you can, stay the long term, definitely do.
You often hear in times of uncertainty, when you see these big swings, of people who want to buy the dip, it's called. People who want to take advantage of stocks when they're at their cheapest. What's your advice on that?
Yeah, well, definitely that is something that we're seeing even overnight. We saw the return of investors turning towards what was previously known as safe haven assets like gold, also the software stocks that were selling off extraordinarily year to date. Now we're seeing a return to that. Keep in mind, if you do have the ability, definitely look for ways to diversify your portfolio right now. And also keep in mind what we saw last year after April of 2025 with that large sell-off following the President Trump's tariffs and the enactment of those was the S&P 500 then recover and see an 18% gain at the end of 2025. So definitely keep in mind we are seeing a bit of a sell-off, a bit of a pullback, and this could be an opportunity to get in to then see compounded interest moving forward.
Clearly, a lot of Americans have gas prices on their mind. That's the first thing you think of. But if this is longer, if it does end up going weeks and weeks and weeks, what are some of the other areas Americans could see the impact of this?
Yeah, well, something that was really interesting to me that I've discovered over the past few days is not only the Strait of Hormuz is known for 20% of the global oil supply, but in addition to that, it also imported about 30% of fertilizer had passed through that strait as well. And that could have serious implications for farmers ahead of the spring planting season. That could then have long-term implications for the cost of food and goods. Ultimately, at the end of the day, though, These oil prices, as they set to continue right now, crude oil pulling back a bit of the highs earlier this morning. As you've heard probably many times, for every $10 that crude oil jumps, that means 25 cents higher at the gas pump. And right now, overnight, we already saw gas prices surge about 20 cents over the last few days alone. And so that will stick around for quite a bit. Gas prices tend to rise faster than they fall.
All right, Brooke DePalma, thanks so much.
Let's take a look outside our window here at Rockefeller Center as New York mops up from yesterday's wet weather. And some other parts of the country, severe storms are in the forecast for the rest of the week, from Texas to Indiana. So let's get your morning News Now weather.
Angie Lastman's here in studio with us. Hi, Angie. Good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning to you. You said it. We've got severe weather to talk about. We're getting to that part of the season where this is something that will be on our minds. And today and through really the next couple of days, that'll be something that we're talking about. Let's start with what we have currently, and that's some heavy rain working across parts of the Ohio Valley. You can see flood alerts up, folks in Indianapolis, Cincinnati, Charleston dealing with those, and 7 million people in total included in that. And that's just one facet of this overall system that we're kind of watching as the day goes on. Here's the deal. We've got some of that heavy rain stretching from anywhere from Ohio all the way back to Texas. We are going to look at that flood risk because our saturated soils are something we're dealing with. And then on top of that, we've got those stronger storms that we could see develop as the afternoon gets underway. So anywhere from Texas to Indiana, Evansville, Springfield, Fort Smith, Dallas, all included in that with all the threats on the table. So the wind gusts, we've got the hail, we've got the potential for a tornado or two. They'll likely be brief and on the weaker side, but still something that we'll watch here as we get through the second half of our day today. By tomorrow, much of that rain, it works into the Northeast. So while we have a dry day for folks across the Northeast today, tomorrow, not the case. You'll want the umbrella as you head out the door. That goes for folks across the Great Lakes as well. That soaking rain and those storms will be once again on the table. By the way, we'll see a couple of spots that could maybe pick up some icing because on that northern edge of that storm system, it is quite chilly. So some ice is going to be possible on that commute as well. Otherwise, as we look a little farther to the south, there's that second day in a row of the severe potential with the hail, the wind gusts, and the tornadoes also possible stretching from Kansas through Texas. And then we're not done yet. We've still got those storms potentially in the picture for your Friday as we round out our work week. Multiple rounds of the heavy rain will be centered across the plains and the Midwest. And you'll even pick up some additional snow. We're not quite done with winter just yet, but I think that we're starting to transition, guys, into that part of the season where we're more focused on the spring-like temperatures and those spring-like storms. So this is what we're also going to see on Friday, really stretching from the Midwest down to the south. Again, major cities of Oklahoma, Kansas City, all included in that. And we could on Friday see some strong storms. So make sure that, we're getting to that part of the season where we might not have our tornado plans in place, and having a way to get those alerts is going to be important this week.
We're moving from the snowstorms
to
tornadoes.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Angie.
Thank you. You got it.
Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, a rare conviction. A Georgia father found guilty on all charges, including second-degree murder for a school shooting allegedly carried out by his son. More on the verdict, the reaction, and what happens next.
With major implications in Washington as the Republican race for Senate heads to a runoff. We will have the results. That's next. Stay with us. We are back now with some of the first primary results from this year's midterm elections. NBC News projects that Texas State Representative James Tallarico has won the Democratic Senate nomination for the Lone Star State, defeating Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. But as Texas Democrats hope to put the traditionally red Senate seat in play this fall, they will have to wait several more weeks to know the Republican nominee. Because over on the Republican side, NBC News is projecting that incumbent Senator John Cornyn and State Attorney General Ken Paxton will advance to a runoff election. Here to talk us through last night's results, we have NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson. Priscilla, thanks for being up early out there in the dark for us to talk through these important races. So Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, she is somewhat of a rising star in the Democratic Party. So this result was a surprise to some because she has this growing national profile. What is the sense in Texas of how James Tallarico upset Crockett?
Yeah, so Congresswoman Crockett definitely came into this race with the name recognition, and these two candidates were fairly similar in terms of their policy positions, but they had two very different pitches for voters. Crockett really pitched herself as a fighter, someone who was going to take on Donald Trump and stand for Democrats, whereas State Representative James Tallarico was talking about taking on economic and political systems that are run by billionaires, saying that, yes, he was going to take on Trump, but also that he was pitching himself as sort of this big tent Democrat who would bring in independents, who could bring in disaffected Republicans, whereas Representative Crockett was really focused on bringing in and juicing the Democratic voter turnout. And so two very different strategies there. And we see that Tallarico was the one that ultimately proved successful. But I will also say that it was a very long night last night, and Crockett actually came out and said she did not think that there was going to be a result because there were all of these issues at the polls in Dallas County and also in Williamson County in Austin, near Austin, and there's currently this legal battle going on over whether or not the extra 2 hours of voting that had been granted, if those votes are going to be allowed to be counted at this point. But regardless, based on the numbers, it looks like Tallarico has won it here.
Yeah, that was big news last night in terms of some of those issues with polling. I'm going to ask you about Republicans, but first I need to ask about your wildlife situation. Priscilla, are those birds? Are those bats?
Yes, so this is a huge parking lot, and there are a lot of birds going on. It's why I've got this microphone with me today. So mornings in Texas, gotta love them.
Apparently, it sounds lovely. They're all just waking up in time for your live shot. Okay, let's talk on the Republican side. So incumbent Senator John Cornyn and Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, they're heading for a runoff election. They've knocked Congressman Wesley Hunt out of the running. President Trump notably did not endorse in this race, but walk us through how Republican Party dynamics played out in this contest and just for our viewers, explain a runoff.
Yeah, so despite lots of pressure and hopes for him to endorse, the president did not do that. And so on one hand, you had longtime Senator John Cornyn, who represents those sort of traditional Texas conservative sort of model, if you will. And then on the other hand, you had Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who was very much aligned himself with Trump, is considered the sort of MAGA candidate in this race. And so what we saw is that it is going to go to a runoff. Neither candidate got 50%. And so over the next 12 weeks, we are going to see more campaigning. We expect it to get even more vicious, with Ken Paxton criticizing Cornyn and whether or not he really stands with Trump, stands with MAGA. And then you also have Paxton, who comes with his own baggage, including an impeachment that he was able to fight off based around corruption and conspiracy. And so some voters are saying he's crooked. They don't agree with that. But then you have other voters who are saying, you know, what politician doesn't perhaps have some baggage, but they feel like Paxton is the one that is more aligned with Trump. And so watching very closely to see if Trump is going to weigh in now before this race gets even more expensive and even more potentially vicious, with these two Republicans having to battle it out over the next 12 weeks.
A lot to watch for over those 12 weeks. Priscilla Thompson, thank you so much. Well, in Georgia, the father of an accused school shooter has been convicted in a rare case holding a parent criminally responsible for a child's actions. A jury found Colin Gray guilty on all charges, including second-degree murder and involuntary manslaughter. Prosecutors said Gray gave his son unrestricted access to the rifle and ammunition he used in the shooting at Appalachia High School that left 4 dead. And that was despite warning signs of his potential for violence and an obsession with other school shooters. The jury deliberated less than 2 hours before returning that guilty verdict. Gray now faces up to 243 years in prison. Well, his son, Colt Gray, has been indicted on 55 counts related to the shooting, which killed 2 students and 2 teachers. He has pleaded not guilty. His trial date has not been set. For more on this case, let's bring in NBC News national correspondent Aaron Gilchrist. Aaron, good morning. You and I were watching this verdict together yesterday. It is only the second time in U.S. history that a parent has been held criminally responsible in a school shooting case. Our viewers may remember the Crumbly family, where a similar situation unfolded. The first time that a parent has been convicted of second-degree murder, though, in this one, right? What happens next for Colin Gray?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the law in Georgia is somewhat unique in that second-degree murder charge is only applicable in cases where a child has been killed, and it requires that there be a cruelty to children element to the crime to get a conviction there. And so those two second-degree murder charges are related to the two students who were killed in the shooting here. And the prosecution's argument throughout this trial, which lasted 2 weeks, was that Colin Gray gave his son a weapon despite knowing that his son had challenges, that there were threats that his son had been accused of making. There were instances of anger and depression that his son had experienced. And the prosecutor said that those were conditions that existed over the course of years, that it wasn't just one or two instances that this father missed, but he was aware of these challenges through the course of his son Colt's life, and still he gave him a rifle, and still he never took the rifle away from him, and he also did not get him counseling, any sort of mental health help through the course of his young life. And so that's the case that prosecutors built here, and that is what the jury believed after hearing from more than 60 witnesses, after watching video of Colt Gray walking through the school carrying allegedly that rifle in his backpack, and watching video of the shooting play out itself. As far as Colin Gray goes, moving forward from here, Savannah, a date has not yet been set for sentencing. Prosecutors want to talk to the victims' families and the victims, for that matter. There were students who testified who were shot during the school shooting. Prosecutors want to talk to them before they go into the sentencing phase of this, recommending a sentence. But you're right, it could be more than 200 years that Colin Gray could be sentenced to.
Aaron, as I mentioned, not completely unprecedented, but rare. This is essentially the second time we've seen something like this happen, where a parent is held responsible for the actions of their child. What kind of message are prosecutors hoping that this case sends? What did we hear from them after the verdict?
You know, it's interesting. The prosecutor in this case several times said that they weren't trying to hold parents necessarily accountable for the actions of their students, but they wanted to hold this particular parent accountable because he was responsible, prosecutors said, and the jury believed, for this shooting in part. But we did also hear this prosecutor, after the trial was over, come out and say that the case in Michigan started prosecutors, communities around the country on a path to holding more people accountable for these school shootings, and to hopefully create an atmosphere where guns are locked up, kept away from potentially dangerous young people who might carry out these types of shooting. Listen to the prosecutor here, the district attorney in Barrow County, Georgia.
Michigan was able to move the needle to the point that it almost stopped this tragedy. We don't know how many tragedies it did stop, and we hope we've moved the needle a little further.
Prosecutors made the case that Colin Gray had 292 days to prevent a school shooting by taking that rifle away from his son, the time between when he gave it to him and when that school shooting happened, Savannah. And they're hoping that this sends a message around the country.
Aaron Gilchrist, thank you very much. Well, coming up, we have continuing coverage of the war on Iran. Our Richard Engel joins us next. Plus, the conflict leaving thousands of Americans stranded overseas. A look at the efforts to get them back home after the break. This is Morning News Now. We are back with more on the deadly war unfolding in the Middle East. The United States and Israel are intensifying their bombardment of Iran this morning as American lawmakers are told to expect an overwhelming and even bigger wave of strikes in the coming days. So far, the strikes have killed more than 1,000 civilians in Iran, according to a state-affiliated news outlet. Among the places hit by Israel is this building we're showing you now, housing Iran's Assembly of Experts. That is the group that is tasked with choosing the country's next supreme leader following the assassination of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. His funeral was due to be held today, but was now postponed. Excuse me. Meanwhile, in Lebanon, the World Food Program says more than 65,000 people have been displaced as Israel steps up strikes and a new ground offensive in its fight with Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel joins us now from Tel Aviv. Richard, thank you for being here. So it doesn't look like there's been any let up in these strikes on Iran. What are we seeing there? Could the attack on that building, again, I explained this is the group that picks the next supreme leader. How could that have an impact on this process?
No let up at all. Just the last hour or so, there have been 2 alerts here in Tel Aviv. In fact, while you were reading that introduction, there were more air raid sirens in Tel Aviv. So we are waiting at any moment. Perhaps there could be incoming fire. There could be interceptions over the city. The air raid sirens just stopped a moment ago. So very much an ongoing situation. And U.S. and Israeli officials say this is just getting started, that a more intense military phase of this operation is set to begin. And now in the distance, on the edge of Tel Aviv, it may or may not come up on this microphone, I'm hearing some explosions quite a distance away from where I am. You may be able to hear them, may not. So there is still incoming fire at Israel happening right now. You mentioned Lebanon. A lot of the military activity has shifted in the last 24 hours or so to Lebanon. We've talked a lot about Israel. Again, incoming fire as we're speaking on the edges of this city. We've talked a lot about how the U.S. and Israel are attacking Iran, targeting the military, targeting the leadership. But for the last 24 hours or so, there has been this shift to attack Hezbollah targets all over the country, in Beirut, in southern Lebanon. According to medical officials there, more than 60 people, as you just mentioned, have been killed. And Israeli ground forces have also taken more territory in Lebanon. So this is a war that is expanding. It is involving more countries. France is sending its only aircraft carrier to the region in order to prevent Iran from choking off the world's supply of oil and gas. We're not in World War III, but more and more countries are at war than they have been in decades.
Richard, Iran also continues to hit back with drones and missiles. We've seen American embassies be a major target for them, including the U.S. consulate in Dubai. We have just recently seen. What can you tell us about that?
So diplomatic facilities are absolutely being attacked. Several embassies and consulates across the Middle East have been closed. They have been issuing warnings, telling American citizens not to rely on consular services to help them evacuate the country. Just today here in Israel, some Americans got on buses heading toward the border. So these advisories have gone out telling Americans, if they can, to leave the country, to leave 14 different countries in the Middle East by commercial means. But that is easier said than done because airports are in cases overwhelmed. Flights have been canceled. Many countries have closed airspaces, and diplomatic facilities are not working at full capacity. So people who may have lost documents, lost tickets, unable to get on flights, encountering a considerable amount of distress and confusion during this period.
All right, Richard Engel, please stay safe for us. Thank you, as always, for your reporting. Well, as the war rages on, thousands of Americans are still stranded in the Middle East with few options to evacuate. Multiple airlines have canceled flights, while some U.S. embassies have canceled appointments and suspended emergency services, including some closing altogether. All this is leading to growing frustration over the government's response, with some stranded travelers saying U.S. officials are not acting fast enough and had no plan in advance of these strikes. Brian Stern joins me now on this. He is the founder of Gray Bull Rescue. That is a nonprofit that helps rescue Americans and allies in situations just like this one. Brian, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. Incredible work that I know your team is doing. I know you're working right now to evacuate people from Israel, and that you've led similar evacuations like this in places like Syria and Ukraine. For Americans who are stuck in the Middle East right now, many of whom I do just want to point out, we've had some on our show were on vacation, celebrating an anniversary in somewhere like Dubai, or just having even a layover coming from a vacation elsewhere. And now they are stuck in some of these countries with airports completely shut down. What should they be doing when they're hearing the message, get out on a commercial flight, and there simply are not any?
The first thing they should do is be registered with the U.S. Embassy in the particular country. The STEP program is a tremendous program that where they put out really good information. Number one, number two, if they're safe, they should stay put. Don't leave fun to find fun. Don't leave safety to find safety. The third thing people can do is register at graybullrescue.org. We're actually in the middle of an evacuation operation as I talk to you. It's kind of right behind me. We just rescued 100 and something American citizens from Israel into another country. So if you register with us, we'll do our best to get you out. That said, we're entirely donor funded. We don't receive a penny from the government, not even a thank you note. So if you want to help, also go to GrableRescue.org and push the donate button. Buses cost money, airplanes cost money. We're chartering an aircraft tonight for 140 people. That costs money. The buses behind me, they need gas. Those drivers need to be paid. So we don't charge money to our people. We're a nonprofit. So those are the things that people can do to help out right now.
Just, again, incredible work that you're doing. Can you tell us, Brian, how does this work? How are you able to go in and rescue people from places that are clearly unsafe, where people need to be evacuated from, and where there aren't other traditional means of getting out?
Well, this is we're in the middle of our 806th mission as I talk to you right now. 806 is right behind me. We've worked all over the world, from Afghanistan during the withdrawal, Ukraine, Russia, Lebanon, Syria, Haiti, Sudan, all over the world. And the reality is that we don't, because we're not government, we're able to move very, very, very fast. There's no bureaucracy. We're really only limited by our finances, frankly, by funding. We rescued just under 8,500 people in 4 years, including Maria Corina Machado from Venezuela just a few months ago, 5 hostages from Gaza, 12 jailbreaks from Russia, all kinds of things, including these mass evacuations. So the reason why is because we're not government. We don't really answer to anyone. I'm not a colonel trying to become a general. So we're able to do things real fast. And frankly, if you're in trouble, you don't care who comes for you. You don't care if it's SEAL Team 2 or the State Department or the Ladies Auxiliary of the VFW or Grable Rescue. When you're in trouble, you just want to know you don't want to be in trouble anymore. We were taking missile fire just last night, my team, and we just heard some explosions in the distance about 2 seconds ago. So it is pretty dangerous.
What happens when airspaces start to close? What is your means of getting people out when commercial airlines cannot?
Yeah, so mostly we almost always, when we do these large evacuations, have a ground component paired with an air component or a maritime component. So we kind of start in the hot zone, get to a warm zone, and then get to safety. It depends on the where. What's interesting about this conflict is this is the first time where we have multiple countries' airspace closed. Usually it's a country. Usually it's Israel or Lebanon or wherever it is, or Ukraine, where a country is closed and we have to go from one country, from the war zone to a neighboring country. In this case, everywhere around this region is at least having contested airspace, if not closed airspace.
Right. Wow. Brian Stern, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Incredible. Again, I will keep saying it, the work that you're doing. We're happy to get the word out about your service. Thank you so much. Let's now bring in NBC News reporter Gary Grumbach for more on how this growing unrest in the Middle East is affecting this air travel and what carriers are doing about it. Gary, good morning. So as we've been mentioning, U.S. officials urging Americans to get out of the area. It's a list of 14 countries across the Middle East that they've put out. But those airports are closed. Those airspaces are closed. Airlines have canceled those flights. It's really getting harder day by day. We have been talking to people on the show, some of whom I know, for example, have a flight scheduled for late this week, maybe this weekend, but with a real question mark of if that's even going to be possible at that point. What is the latest guidance from the State Department, and what is the government doing to help?
Well, it's been a series of mixed messages from the U.S. government over the past 72 hours. It started with the Assistant Secretary for Consular Affairs posting on her X platform at 1 a.m. Mideast time for 14 countries worth of Americans to evacuate from the Middle East. It's not exactly somebody who people have X alerts on their phones for. And then consulate officials spent their entire day yesterday on their emergency line that the State Department has set up, telling people that they're logistically and financially essentially on their own, and they're best off just sheltering in place, whether they're in the UAE and Oman or anywhere around the region. And then the president last night around 7 p.m. posted on Truth Social saying, quote, "The department will identify where you are and provide travel options to you," saying we're already chartering flights free of charge and booking commercial options where we expect to be increasingly available as time goes on. So, Savannah, bottom line, a ton of mixed messages here. As interceptions, as you just saw in Richard's live shot, interceptions of missiles are going on as we speak.
Gary, has this impacted flights around the world?
It has, and actually I want to show you what airspace looks like right now over the Middle East. This is a live graphic of what it looks like. You see that big empty spot overhead? That is where Iran is. Just to the right, to the left of it is where Iraq is. There is no planes getting in or out of that area, and they have to divert around the entire Middle East region. Right now, Dubai International Airport, one of the biggest airports in the entire world, has about 40 flights scheduled for today. Usually it has thousands. So we're talking some serious trouble getting out if you need to get out of that region by air. That's why officials are saying, can you drive to another country where perhaps the airports are open, Savannah?
And how have commercial airlines just generally been affected, and what's their communication been like with passengers?
So U.S. airlines have put out a number of different waivers and a number of different rules of what's going on here. And United, flights to and from Tel Aviv and Dubai have all been canceled for the next week. American Airlines, very similar, canceling flights between Doha and Philadelphia, which is a major hub for people trying to get over there to Qatar. And Delta has canceled all flights for the next several weeks between New York and Tel Aviv. So certainly American Airlines are stopping travel towards the Middle East.
All right, Gary Grumbach, thank you so much. Well, coming up, not so sweet dreams. A new study shows more kids are struggling with sleep. We will find out why and what can be done about it. Your weekly checkup is next here on Morning News Now. We're back now with our weekly medical checkup. This week, a major new analysis on breast cancer, which identifies the 6 biggest lifestyle factors that increase your risk. Plus, we've got a concerning trend in kids and teens sleeping. We're also going to tell you what a new study reveals about ultra-processed foods and behavior in preschoolers. Here to break down these health headlines is our friend, NBC News medical contributor, Dr. Kavita Patel. Always great to have you with us, Doctor. Let's start with this new breast cancer report. So it finds that more than a quarter of cases worldwide are tied to risks that we can actually do something about. I mean, that sounds like maybe some good news to feel like you've got a little bit of control in a situation like this. It does, though, unfortunately predict that cases will rise. Talk us through the findings.
Yeah, this is from the Global Burden of Disease Survey, which found, as you point out, that over 25% of global breast cancer burden in women is tied to changeable habits. And we're talking about things like diet, activity, smoking. And unfortunately, even because of this knowledge, we know that we will see cases rise to 3.5 million people with breast cancer by 2050, and deaths could increase 44% by 2050. Those are largely, Savannah, though, in lower to middle income countries, largely not the United States, because we've made such significant advances in cutting down death from breast cancer, but it is still the #1 cancer in women. Key risks: high red meat intake, tobacco, secondhand smoke, high blood sugar, and excess weight. So the doctor's orders here: regular screening is always key. Maintain a healthy weight, and we now have talked about many ways to do it, both through a nutrient-rich diet, but then avoid things like smoking and even secondhand smoke.
All right, good advice there. Next, it's the beginning of National Sleep Month, by the way. We've got a couple of studies here to talk about in that theme. The first study found that insufficient sleep among teens is getting worse. And then the second study found that younger kids are actually also struggling with being tired, even though most have these regular bedtimes. What's the big takeaway here?
Yeah, it's troubling because these are two studies, national surveys looking at over 120,000 U.S. high school students, and a second also looking at tens of thousands of children, looking at school nights, trying to link this to mental health, substance use, other behaviors. 77% of teens get 7 hours or less of sleep. That's less than even we recommend for adults. Girls are more likely than boys to claim being tired even at a younger age, but both groups were found to have too little sleep. Nearly 77%, as we mentioned, having too little sleep, and the proportion sleeping 5 hours or less, which is really not enough time, jumped to about 23%. Huge. So what's striking here, Savannah, is that the sleep got worse, not just in children and teens with behavioral disorders or other experiences that we could point out. It was even in children that didn't have any risk factors. So this is suggesting kind of broader issues: early school start times, academic stress, things that we need to try to help our children do better. So #1, stick to a nighttime routine. The doctor's orders here: limit screens before bedtime, and have like a healthy modeling of how you can sleep better so your children can sleep better.
Really, really good advice there for parents. Okay, this last study, it looks at the impact of ultra-processed foods. We were talking a lot about this on preschoolers. In this one, researchers found that more of these foods, things like those prepackaged snacks, sodas, that these are linked to behavioral and emotional symptoms. What are they?
Yeah, and this is really surprising. 2,000 Canadian preschoolers followed over a period of time. So carefully tracking what these preschoolers ate at age 3 and then measuring behavior all the way through age 5. And what they found was pretty startling. For every 10% of increase in consumption in a diet of ultra-processed foods, there was a proportionate increase in behavioral disorders. We're talking, Savannah, about everything from anxiety, mood disorders, withdrawal, sadness, and all sorts of spectrum hyperactivity disorders. So it was pretty startling. And I think what was really interesting is that for those who did not have as much ultra-processed diet food and also had some activity, even outside activity, that there was a proportionate less kind of degree of any of these behavioral disorders. Now, remember, correlation is not causation, so one does not cause the other, but it is important here to think about the doctor's orders for our preschoolers. Try to start early with better nutrition and education and gradually transition, do these swaps as we've talked about, swap out one food for another, and you can get a better start at a much earlier age.
All right, Dr. Patel, as always, great to have you. Thank you so much. Good advice. Coming up, learning from history. When we come back, we will get perspective on the war with Iran from someone who's experienced conflict firsthand. This is Morning News Now.
Finally this hour, as we cover the war with Iran, we want to look back at another conflict in the region.
Yeah, it's been 35 years since Operation Desert Storm, the combat phase of the first Gulf War, which liberated Kuwait from Iraq. And a new book out this week titled Doom 34 gives a first-hand account of that war's first mission. It was called Operation Senior Surprise because the B-52 bombers that were used were already heading for decommission before being sent on a record-setting 35-hour, 14,000-mile nonstop flight.
Colonel Trey Morris joins us now on set. He was one of the crew members on that mission and is the author of Doom 34. Colonel, good to have you with us. So help us understand how significant the mission was and what it was like to be part of it.
First of all, thank you. To answer your question, yes, so this really was a seminal moment where we see the world transition from the analog way of combat into the digital realm. And what I'm talking about is the use of GPS. So one of the characters of the book and the most important character of this mission is this capability through this new cruise missile that was guided by GPS, the first use of that.
Doom 34, your book, incredible. It feels more like this human account. It's not just like a military history book or anything like that. What do you hope people take away from it?
Absolutely. And that was intentional when I wrote the book because I didn't want it to be a boring book of facts and a documentary. So it really takes the reader into what it's like to be inside a B-52 and the human element of it. I mean, there's 57 of us and only one of us had combat experience.
Wow.
So the military's coming out of the Vietnam hangover, as I call it, and there wasn't that kind of experience, friend. Our average age was 26 years old. So you can imagine getting on an airplane for 35 hours and just this litany of problems throughout the entire mission.
I know this mission in so many ways changed military combat. Talk about long-range bombers and how they become such an important part of military strategy today.
Absolutely. So the Senior Surprise mission that I talked about through Doom 34 was, again, the bar setter of long-range strike. And if we look at Midnight Hammer back in June, 7 B-2 bombers, much like we did in this mission here in Desert Storm. So it really set the bar of how we do long-range strike and how we project power as a country.
Can you talk us through 35 hours? I mean, how is that even possible? And you mentioned issues along the way while you're midair. What were they?
Oh, yeah, so much to wrap your brain around. My airplane, 4 minutes into the mission, we lose an engine. So imagine you've got 35-plus hours ahead of you, and you're already down an engine. And communications problems, radio outages, near midair collision with the first tankers. So it just seemed like every other hour we were problem solving one after the other. The Soviet Navy engages in the Mediterranean. A fighter out of Libya comes out to engage us. And this is all before we even get to the target launch area.
Wow. And all while you're 26.
Yeah.
But you remember it all in detail for the book.
I remember it all, yes.
All right. Colonel Trey Morris, it's good to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspective.
Thank you so much.
And obviously on our minds right now with everything.
Yeah,
happening.
thank you for your service. Thank you for your time this morning as well.
That is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us, though. The news continues right now. Good morning. Thanks for being with us this Wednesday. I'm Savannah Sellers.
And I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, the case for war. Moments from now, we're expecting to hear from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth as the U.S., Israel, and Iran ratchet up military attacks in the Middle East. Top lawmakers briefed yesterday on this week's assault by Trump administration officials. They were told that an overwhelming wave of American attacks in the region is imminent. Back home, though, shockwaves from it all being felt on Wall Street and Main Street alike. We have got team coverage in just a moment. Also this morning, Decision Day in America yielding critical primary results in a pair of pivotal states ahead of this year's midterms. The big races we've got an eye on, including a Lone Star head-to-head that could shake up Texas's GOP stronghold in the Senate. Plus, more than a month after the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, how investigators in Arizona are trying to track down the suspect through their cell phone. Could digital forensics hold the key to cracking this heartbreaking case? And later in the hour, why OpenAI is now taking a major Pentagon deal back to the drawing board amid growing concerns the big tech giant might soon become more like Big Brother. Good morning. Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers.
Let's begin this hour with the latest from the Middle East. Iran is continuing to launch retaliatory strikes across the region as the U.S. and Israel expand their attacks. Now, this video shows U.S. forces taking out missile launchers, which Central Command says Iran had been using to, quote, indiscriminately fire missiles at targets. Right? Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth declaring we have only just begun to fight as he and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Kane, update the nation and the world on the operation in the Middle East. Let's bring in NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez. He is in Washington with more on this. So, Gabe, there's many facets of this story as it continues to unfold. A lot of what's happening on the battlefield and in the skies above that battlefield, as we just heard from that press briefing. Also, the questions that continue to linger about the rationale for this operation and also what happens after the military operation wraps up. Walk us through what the big headlines are this morning.
Yeah, certainly, Joe. A lot to unpack there. You saw Secretary Hegseth continue to try and sell this war to the American public and try to keep morale up, saying things like America is winning without mercy. Also saying of the Iranian regime, they are toast and they know it. And we have only just begun to fight. Now, Secretary Hegseth also laying out that the Iranians, that their missile capacity or how many missiles they're firing has dropped 86% since the firing started, and trying to make the case that along with Israel that they are not just winning this war, but getting better each day. Also, facing questions about the rationale for this war. Secretary of State Marco Rubio yesterday on Capitol Hill briefing lawmakers, raising a lot of skepticism, especially among Democratic lawmakers, about the scope of this conflict. You heard towards the end of that news conference, Secretary Hegseth saying that this could last 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 3 weeks, unclear about exactly how long this war could last, saying it's really up to President Trump. And also, new reporting from NBC News that according to a senior U.S. official, it was a phone call from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to President Trump last Monday, a week and a half ago, that alerted the U.S. to the fact that the supreme leader of Iran would meet with his top leadership on Saturday. And so that was a pivotal moment that led President Trump to decide to strike Iran. The CIA was able to confirm those details as well. So we're getting a better look and better picture of what led up to this, but there has been shifting messaging and mixed messaging from the administration about what led up to this war. Again, top members of the administration, Secretary Hegseth, Secretary Rubio, trying to sell that to not just lawmakers, but to the American people, Joan Savannah.
All right. right, Gabe Gutierrez, thank you so much. Well, for more on this, let's bring in retired Army Lieutenant Colonel at Defense Priorities, Danny Davis. Good morning, Danny. Thank you, as always, for joining us with your expertise here. Let's talk through some of the updates that we got from the Secretary of Defense on what he says has happened to the Iranian capabilities on the ground. He started really by talking about uncontested airspace, saying that the U.S. had complete control of the skies over Iran, also discussing the fact that their ability to shoot back, their shots fired from the area, down 86%, 23% in just the last 24 hours, as well as sinking about half of the Navy. What do you make of those statistics and the success that tells you about this operation?
Well, it definitely says that there is just a substantial, an incredible amount of firepower raining down from the United States and Israel on to Iran. That was obviously expected, and the fact that they have gone through their air defense, if all that is accurate, and they've literally basically obliterated it, that's going to make life a lot worse for the Iranian side. One of the concerns, though, and one of the claims prior to the conflict starting, that the Iranian side may say, okay, you see where our air defense systems are, and that's obvious. We have our satellite capability. We could know where those were and go after them. But apparently quite a number of them, possibly even more than were out, have been in bunkers hidden away. And then once we may think we have air clearance, then those things can be brought back out. And when you think you have a passive area, all of a sudden, here comes some air defense capability with these S-300, S-400s. Perhaps it could come in. Whether that happens remains to be seen, but that is something that I'll be watching for. The other thing that really stood out to me about this, you can talk all day long about a lot of firepower, but what I never heard was, what is the conflict termination objectives? How will you know when this is successful? When you say we're winning, what does that mean? Because you can blow up all kinds of things. We've always known that was in our capability, but how do you end the war? Do you destroy the regime? How do you measure that? And if you don't destroy them and you just keep bombing, I mean, at what point do you say we're literally just bombing every day towards no objective, no attainable military objectives, less boots on the ground, and that could be a problem going forward.
All right, Lieutenant Colonel Danny Davis, thanks as always. Coming up, OpenAI is back under the public microscope this morning.
Why the company is now playing defense over a controversial deal with the Pentagon that has critics worrying big tech might turn into Big Brother with the Trump administration's help. We're going to explain next. Now back with a closer look at what's making news in the world of politics this morning, starting with 2 resignations in the Labor Department.
Legal Affairs reporter Gary Grumbach has that and more for us. Gary, good morning.
As here's what's happening in politics now. 2 sources are telling NBC News that 2 top aides to Labor Secretary Lori Chavez DeRemer has resigned in the middle of a probe about potential misconduct by Labor Department officials. Chavez DeRemer's chief of staff and her deputy were initially placed on administrative leave while the Inspector General for the department investigates possible travel fraud. The complaint that led to this investigation also alleges the Labor Secretary herself pursued an inappropriate relationship involving a subordinate. Her lawyer denies any wrongdoing on her behalf. A federal judge in Minnesota really got into it with Minnesota's top federal prosecutor during a hearing yesterday, where Judge Jeffrey Bryan was trying to understand why the federal government violated 28 different court orders in 28 different cases. The court orders all centered around the government's failure to return personal property taken from immigrants at the time of their arrests, including immigration documents, driver's licenses, work permits, and even cash. Judge Bryan walked U.S. Attorney Daniel Rosen through each case, having him explain what happened to each person's property and how they're going to get it returned. And finally, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has agreed to testify in House Oversight Committee's probe of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The agreement to testify comes after he admitted during a Senate hearing last month that he visited Epstein's Island in 2012 for lunch with his wife, kids, and nannies, but denied any wrongdoing in connection with Epstein. No date has been set for the deposition just yet, but it should be noted Lutnick is not accused of any criminal wrongdoing. That's what's happening in politics now. Guys, back to you.
All right, Gary, thank you so much. Well, now to the latest on the Pentagon's efforts to sign up an artificial intelligence supplier. OpenAI has reworked its deal with the Defense Department after major public backlash over privacy concerns. CEO Sam Altman revealed an updated agreement Monday night, which he claims has stronger guarantees that OpenAI systems won't be used for domestic surveillance.
The company and the government had originally reached a deal last Friday after negotiations between the Pentagon and a rival AI company, Anthropic, fell through. Until last week, Anthropic was the only major AI firm whose services were cleared for use on classified networks.
NBC News AI reporter Jared Perlow is here to break it all down for us. Jared, great to have you with us as always. Walk us through everything we know at this point about this deal and what it is that OpenAI has changed over the past couple days.
Yeah, absolutely. So OpenAI is one of the biggest AI companies in the world right now. Valuation is $700 billion, something silly like that. So the Pentagon really likes using AI. And there's actually fascinating new reporting this morning out of the Washington Post saying that the Pentagon is actively using AI systems from Anthropic, OpenAI's rival, in the war in Iran to select targets and to basically sift through mountains of data. However, there's a huge spat disagreement with Anthropic, and the Pentagon is basically looking for a new service provider. So on Friday evening, OpenAI swooped in and basically announced that they had reached a new agreement with the Pentagon. However, critics said that there was lots of kind of loopholes for two key areas: domestic surveillance and potentially the use of AI in autonomous lethal weapons, basically kind of killer robots. So there was a lot of backlash to that. So Monday night, Sam Altman announced there had been a new deal, new language had been reached, and I'll just quote here, specifying that the AI systems shall not intentionally be used for domestic surveillance of U.S. persons. And for the avoidance of doubt, the Defense Department, understands this limitation to prohibit deliberate tracking, surveillance, or monitoring of U.S. persons. So that's the big new development here.
So there is a strong reaction for, especially when you look at ChatGPT, that's OpenAI's chatbot taking a big hit. Here's the stat. Saturday night, 295% surge in users uninstalling the app in the U.S. Basically, people are saying they're worried about privacy. Talk about what some of their concerns are.
Yeah, so I think zooming out here, it's incredibly important to realize that AI, it's just such an incredibly powerful technology as applies to surveillance. So when you think about the vast amounts of digital data that everybody's phone, everybody's computer basically spits off every second, AI is now at the point where it can instantaneously pinpoint where somebody is, what they're doing, their behavior, and basically compile all that information in ways that we just haven't seen before. So privacy advocates are saying this is a new frontier in terms of invasive technologies. So critics over the weekend were basically saying, and even now some still aren't satisfied with the new language, they basically say that there are purposely vague words in the contract that might allow the Pentagon or the government to take a very expansive reading of what's allowed. So I'll highlight they use the word intentionally or deliberate, but the Pentagon might say, for instance, collect data and then, say, well, we didn't mean to track U.S. people, but the data wound up in our systems and we're going to target you anyway. So that's what people are really concerned about. And they say that without the full text of the contract, it's really hard to make a judgment on what these protections actually look like.
There's another big AI company, Anthropic. Maybe some of our viewers are familiar with Claude, their sort of version of ChatGPT, their chatbot. They've been in a pretty intense back and forth with the Pentagon as well. Very different, though, than the one with OpenAI. Walk us through that.
Yeah, so OpenAI again kind of swooped in because Anthropic was at odds with the Pentagon here. So on Friday, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said that he would label or move to label Anthropic as a supply chain risk for national security. That's a designation that Anthropic says has never been publicly applied to any company before, ever. So this would mean that the Pentagon would have to cut off all business with Anthropic. But as I mentioned, we had new reporting this morning say that as we speak, it's being used for targeting decisions in the war in Iran. So we basically see, a clash of personalities. Maybe there's some personal politics there, but it seems like Anthropic's on the out and OpenAI is on the in. Some privacy advocates are not so happy about that.
So where might this go from here? What are the big questions you have right now?
So the big questions are, what do the actual privacy protections in the contract look like? OpenAI's head of national security said that she wasn't really inclined to release the full contract. I think that would be really important to see. And then also just to make sure that, does the government, does the Defense Department actually take a very wide and expansive reading of the contract? Or, in 2 years, 3 years, are they actually really sticking with a more narrow definition? I think, honestly, it's one of those time will tell situations, but keen to watch.
Jared Perlow, fascinating stuff. Thank you for walking us through it.
Of course.
Let's stay on artificial intelligence. Amazon is expanding its AI footprint through a new deal with one top university.
NBC News business and economy reporter Emily Lorsch has your Money Minute. Emily, good morning.
Good morning, guys. It's a more than $400 million deal in which Amazon Data Services is buying George Washington University's Virginia Science and Technology campus. It's a site that could become Amazon's next AI hub. The sale comes as the university faces a more than $20 million budget deficit and looks to stabilize finances. GW saying this agreement is part of its broader strategy to do exactly that. Meanwhile, Pinterest is getting a $1 billion boost from the investment firm Elliott Investment Management. Pinterest's more than 600 million active users are mainly women who use the social media platform to find new products and brands. As a result, the company's primary revenue is ad sales, which have been struggling as retailers pull back due to tariffs. And an apparent fast food feud is going viral. It all started when McDonald's CEO posted an Instagram video of him taste testing the new Big Arch burger, some saying he wasn't enthusiastic enough. Now, Burger King posting a TikTok of its own, the company's president taking a big bite of the Whopper. The internet exploding, saying it was a clap back. Burger King tells NBC News that the chain's video wasn't created in reaction to anything and that it was part of an ongoing effort to spotlight the recent, quote, elevated Whopper. Now, you guys know that I'm always all about the taste test. We had some taste testing from Starbucks drinks yesterday. So if it wasn't so early and Savannah, if I was easily able to order both burgers for us, we would have been trying those too.
Okay, that is what I want, not that sugary drink purple thing. But anyway, thank you.
Later,
I don't
Savannah,
need a burger
let's go
at this
on
hour
our
anyway. Yeah.
burger haul.
Thanks, Emily. All right, coming up, continuing coverage of America's escalating war with Iran. After the break, we are taking a closer look at who might replace the supreme leader as the nation is in the face of this devastating violence. That's next on Morning News Now. Welcome back. Finally, this hour, the group responsible for selecting Iran's next supreme leader met yesterday to start the process of picking a successor. Now, after the Ayatollah was killed in a U.S. strike on Saturday, their pick will be the most significant change to Iran's leadership since 1989. It will also indicate Iran's political and cultural future. For more, let's bring in NBC News contributor Houman Majd. Good morning. Great to have you joining us again. I want to just start actually on what we believe this process may even be like, given the conditions on the ground currently. We know U.S. and Israeli airstrikes have been targeting any form of leadership, which includes this particular group that would select the next supreme leader. And according to both militaries, those strikes have been fairly successful. How do you even see this process unfolding, given that many of these members may have been killed, and what that means for how this moves forward?
Well, we don't know how many have been killed. What we do know is this assembly of experts, which is 88 clerics, who are elected actually by the people to select the next supreme leader when one dies. Now, of course, that hasn't happened before during a time of war. We don't know exactly how they're meeting, or how many of them are meeting. We do know that it's remote. Under the Constitution, it's supposed to be in person, but obviously you can't really gather 88 clerics in one place. Israel or the United States or both would clearly attack that body. So they are meeting remotely, and they have that ability to do so. There is a front runner, according to the New York Times, which is the supreme leader's son, Mojtaba Khamenei, but it's not at all clear that that's the selection yet. There are going to be people who are in favor of one Ayatollah or another. There's Ayatollah Arafi, who is part of the council right now, the three-person council doing the job or fulfilling the duties of the supreme leader. He's a potential candidate. He's a hardliner. Mojtaba Khamenei, Khamenei's son, is also considered to be a hardliner. He's been relatively kept in the background with his father over the years. Allegedly, his wife has also been killed in the strike on his father. So he is undoubtedly in mourning for both his wife and his father. He has very close ties to the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guards, but so do some of the other potential candidates. For example, Hassan Khomeini, who is the grandson of Ayatollah Khomeini, who was the founder of the Islamic Republic. At any rate, to make a long story short, this is going to take, I think, a few days. I don't think they're going to be able to announce it right away because of the complications of being under bombardment, essentially. As Pete Hegseth said, this war is intense, and Tehran is being bombed from what I can see and what everyone can witness through various reports and verified video. It is a very intense war.
Houman, I think, though, a big question that a lot of people have is, what does that mean for the future of Iran if essentially the next supreme leader is chosen by this group? Or as you're discussing, for example, a front runner, according to the New York Times, is the son of the very person who the United States and Israel set out to take out under the banner of regime change. While the leader, the individual may have changed, that is not regime change. What does that mean for how this moves forward? A supreme leader is chosen. Does it then mean that there's still this potential of a popular uprising and there is change beyond just an individual?
Well, the popular uprising that President Trump had talked about initially when he announced the war, obviously hasn't come about yet mainly because people are being bombed and they're terrified and being killed and trying to escape to places where they're not where it's possible to not be bombed. So you have that aspect. Then you also have the aspect of who's the leader. When you tell people to rise up, you can rise up, but who is the leader? Who's going to take control? Who's going to be the person that you trust as an Iranian living in Iran under bombardment? Who do you trust to take over the government if the regime, which has very deep tentacles? I mean, this is a regime that's been, let's not forget, it's been in power almost for half a century. So that it's deep and it's ideological, and there's people within the regime who potentially could take over, but that's not regime change. President Trump yesterday was suggesting that maybe there'll be a person from the inside, as he was saying. That means no regime change. He argued that Venezuela model would be his preference almost. Again, they haven't identified who is going to be the person or persons to lead this new revolution in Iran or regime change. At this point, if a supreme leader is elected and isn't assassinated again as the second supreme leader to be assassinated, we have to see whether the regime can survive this continuing bombing. It's unclear. Pete Hegseth certainly didn't make it clear what the end goal is, other than just death and destruction. In his own words, they're going to rain death and destruction on Iran. Well, what happens after that? I mean, does that mean Iran just, falls apart, capitulates, waves the white flag of surrender? I don't know that any of those are realistic at this point. And of course, if we land troops, which President Trump did not rule out yesterday, that becomes a whole other story. Yes, we can take over Iran. Of course we can. The United States has that ability to do so, but it's going to be a long fight.
Houman Majd, thank you for joining us once again today with your expertise here, and very nuanced conversation we'll continue to have. We appreciate it. Top of the hour now here, 9 a.m. in New York. We are going to begin this hour with the latest, of course, on the Iran war. And in the last hour, top Pentagon officials held a briefing to provide updates on Operation Epic Fury as it enters its fifth day. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said that the U.S. and Israel have complete and, quote, uncontested control of the Iranian airspace. He struck a defensive and patriotic tone, really, as he worked to boost morale for this conflict. Joint Chief of Staff General Dan Kane outlined how U.S. Central Command is shifting their strategy as the war moves forward.
CENTCOM is now shifting in day 4 already from large deliberate strike packages using standoff munitions at range outside an enemy's ability to shoot at us, now into stand-in precision strikes overhead Iran. This will allow the joint force to deliver significantly increased precision effects on the target.
NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez is in Washington with more on this, and he listened along with us. Gabe, thanks for being back. So the Pentagon gave some details here on Operation Epic Fury. In terms of where it can go next, I was struck by the fact that the Defense Secretary's words were, "We have only just begun this fight." What did you take away from what we learned?
Yeah, that's right, Savannah. Look, we're hearing from the administration that this war is escalating. They are not pulling back. As you mentioned, the Secretary of Defense trying to sell this to the American public, trying to boost morale as well, saying that we are winning, he says. Without mercy, they are toast, and they know it. Now, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs also saying that the operation would expand inland. I thought that was significant, something we have been hearing about for the last day or so, but he's confirming that now more of this operation will target the interior portion of Iran. Now, certainly, the defense secretary also confirming that the U.S. targeted an Iranian ship in international waters, that a submarine hit that ship. So far, this operation is continuing. And it also comes as the Secretary of Defense, Savannah, tried to push back against the notion that Israel dragged the U.S. into this war. That's something that we've been hearing about for the last day or so, with Secretary Rubio yesterday as he briefed lawmakers on Capitol Hill, walking back comments that he made on Monday, seeming to suggest that the reason the U.S. went into this war now was because the U.S. knew that Israel was preparing to strike Iran, that had concerns about Iranian retaliation against Israel and the U.S., and so that's why the U.S. took this preemptive strike. That, of course, has led to criticism from Democrats that it is Israel driving U.S. foreign policy. The president yesterday strongly rejected that and said that it was he who perhaps forced Israel's hand. But certainly a lot of mixed messaging here coming from the administration, but Secretary Hegseth trying to make the case this morning that the U.S. is not only winning this war, but it plans to increase the pace of it. And he also refused to put any certain timeline on this, saying it could be 4 weeks, as the president has laid out before. It could be longer, 6 weeks, or even 3. Pushing back against any suggestion that U.S. officials needed to provide a stronger timeline or more details about operations here. Also, one last point, Savannah. Notice that there were no charts, no maps, no specifics laid out in this news briefing, as perhaps we saw in previous military operations decades ago during the Gulf War. But Secretary Hegseth essentially saying, trust us, we're winning on this one.
And some of the details that he gave were saying that uncontested airspace, that America has complete control of the skies over Iran, discussing this sharp decrease in Iran's firing back from on the ground, also mentioning sinking a good portion of the Navy. Tell us about these military successes that the Secretary of Defense mentioned.
That's right. Hegseth saying that since the beginning of this conflict over the weekend, since the beginning of the war, Iran is now firing 86% less missiles, pointing to that as evidence that the U.S. military is achieving success when it comes to knocking out its capabilities, annihilating its Navy as well. That's one of the objectives that President Trump has laid out, in addition to trying to prevent Iran from achieving a nuclear weapon and wiping out its ballistic missile program. Those are just some of the objectives that the president has laid out. Critics of this administration have said, well, the military objectives are one thing, but the political objectives, if there are any, remain far murkier. The question now, what happens next with the leadership of Iran? The president suggesting yesterday, he was asked about what would a worst-case scenario be in this conflict, and the president said it's possible that whoever replaces the supreme leader could be as bad or worse, and that it would be a worst-case scenario to find out in 5 years that was the case. So certainly a lot of unanswered questions about the political objectives here, but Secretary Hegseth really trying to sell this so far what the American military has done, the military objectives, saying that the U.S. is well on its way to achieving those, Savannah.
Gabe, before I let you go, I do want to ask about our fallen heroes. We got a little bit of information there about the 6 men and women who lost their lives so far in this conflict.
Oh, well, certainly. And look, this is something we're just starting to, learn the names of the fallen, 6 so far. And Secretary Hegseth struck a very solemn tone when speaking about them. And this is something that the president himself has braced the American people for. And Secretary Hegseth, once again this morning, said that it is a possibility as this conflict ramps up. You see there the Pentagon releasing the pictures and names of some of these service men and women who have been killed in action. This is obviously a very difficult part of this war, something that many of the president's supporters in his base wanted voted against, essentially. The president campaigned on the idea of no more extended foreign wars. Now, it was interesting to hear Secretary Hegseth today during his comments making the case that this was America first, that this was in line with the president's promises during the campaign. And when you speak with White House officials and administration officials, they do try to argue that the president is trying to achieve peace through strength here. Certainly many Democrats on Capitol Hill, especially after getting that briefing from Secretary Rubio and other top administration officials yesterday, they argue that they are not confident that the administration has a specific plan when it comes to these political objectives, and they fear that they could see many more American casualties as this war drags on. Savannah.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez from Washington, D.C. for us. Thank you very much. For more on this, let's bring in NBC News correspondents Matt Bradley and reporter Matt Bodner. Good morning. Thank you to both of you. Matt Bodner, let me start with you. Something that we were just discussing with Gabe, Secretary Hegseth, saying that the U.S. and Israel have complete, uncontested control of Iranian airspace. It's difficult to communicate with anyone in Iran, given the internet blackouts that they're experiencing. But what do we know about what that might look like or mean for Iranians on the ground right now?
Thank you, Savannah. Well, just to start by quoting Secretary Hegseth, uncontested control of the air. It means, quote, we will fly all day, all night, day and night, finding, fixing, and finishing the missiles and defense industrial base of the Iranian military. As for the experience on the ground, we're hearing already from our bureau in Tehran that civilians are hiding in their homes, being shaken by bombs, hitting things like police stations, other infrastructure around the city. But one thing we're hearing from the ground is police stations are being targeted, and that's something that is obviously located close to residential areas in a lot of cities. So that's something that I think that civilians will have to contend with in the coming day, as we've heard this statement from Hegseth, basically pledging the operation will continue, will escalate, and that the United States is winning.
But let's bring Matt Bradley into the conversation. Matt, you are on the ground in Tel Aviv. If viewers have been with us since early this morning, they may notice that your background has changed. You were where you are now. You had to evacuate to get to a shelter earlier. I see you are back there. I'm assuming that means that it's safe, but that leads me to my question on not only retaliatory strikes from Iran across the region, though we did hear from the Secretary of Defense and General Kane that their ability to fire back has decreased dramatically. We are still seeing events in the area, for example, where you are, shots from across the Lebanese border with Hezbollah. Walk us through the status of retaliatory strikes and how you're doing this morning, given the shift we've seen in your location.
Yeah, I mean, we just heard from Secretary of War Pete Hegseth saying that the amount of missiles has died down. We're getting the same sounds from the Israeli side, but you wouldn't know it here on the ground. And while the tempo has decreased, already today we've had to go to cover multiple times in our little bomb shelter here in our offices. And just now, just before you came to me here, we got another alert warning that in a few minutes, alarms will sound in your area. So that could mean that I'm going to have to make somewhat relaxed exit in the coming minutes if we start to hear those alarms going off. This latest salvo, it sounds like from the Israelis, they already sent a message saying that was coming from Iran, so that should give us a little more time. But already we've been seeing today multiple missiles coming in from Lebanon, which means that the Hezbollah is still maintaining. And here we have that air raid siren. Hezbollah is still keeping up its attacks, and now I have to go to the air raid shelter.
All right, Matt Bradley, please get safe. A great example of exactly what you are discussing is happening on the ground there. Matt Bodner, one more question for you before I let you go. We are learning new information about how this war started. Axios has some reporting here, exclusive reporting. It's giving new insight to a call between President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu. Walk us through what we know about how that may have set things in motion.
So there's a lot of back and forth on this question of who sort of provoked the operation that we're seeing now. Did the United States act, as has been claimed, because the Israelis were going to go ahead anyway, and therefore American assets in the region would be facing retaliation? With those sort of criticisms, we've seen the White House come back and President Trump sort of insinuate he sort of pushed the Israelis in that direction. So this remains kind of one of the questions. We are seeing, reporting now again from Axios that there was a conversation between Trump and Netanyahu that did lead to this decision to launch this massive aerial campaign. But this is not something that NBC has been able to confirm independently, and we're still waiting for more information on exactly the mechanics of how this all came to be.
All right, Matt Bodner and Matt Bradley, thank you both very much. Let's now bring in NBC News military analyst Colonel Steve Warren here on set. He has been with us throughout this conflict and continues to lend us his expertise. Thank you for being back. I, of course, want to start with you on some of the military updates that we got there from the Secretary of Defense and from General Kane. What do you make of this idea of uncontested airspace, complete control? What can you put in context the type of advantage that gives during an operation like this?
Sure, it's a very important advantage because what it allows us to do when the airspace is contested, in order to enter that airspace, we have two options. Number one, if you want to enter that airspace, you have to clear a path first using missiles to reduce or suppress enemy air defenses. If you want to shoot inside of there, you could also stand outside of that airspace and fire a long-range missile in. So it's annoying. It's a lot to do just to drop one bomb. Now, when the airspace is uncontested, that means we can fly anything we want to in and out whenever we want to. We don't need to be stealthy about it. We can fly B-52s and B-1s and fighter jets. They can come and go as they please. They can strike the targets that they want to strike, and they can depart safely.
What does that mean in terms of moving forward? Like, especially because we have heard from top officials that there could be this like sort of overwhelming increase in strikes that we see, sort of a new front of this attack on Iran. How quickly do you think certain objectives could find success on if they have that ability?
Right. So, there's still a lot to be done. There's still a long target list that needs to be serviced, right? We already talked about a little bit the Navy. The Secretary talked about the Navy. If you recall, that was one of President Trump's initial objectives. The Navy is largely, at least the major surface combatants, largely suppressed, sunk. There's a lot of small, fast boats. There's a lot of ballistic missile launchers. We've, again, reduced them. We've heard that the number of launches from Iran is down by almost 80%.
Right.
That's a good sign. But there's still more to be done. They still have all of these drones, these Shahed drones, which can be reconnaissance or they can be attacked. They can be packed with explosives and fly into things. And this is what's actually killed our American soldiers up till now.
What do you think when you hear the Secretary of Defense say we've only just begun to fight?
Yeah, so I think he's signaling to us that there is much more to do. This target list that the Pentagon has generated in order to achieve the goals that the President and Secretary have laid out, this is going to be a long list. Because remember, we've said not only do we want to destroy their missiles, their ballistic missile capability, the Secretary said it this morning, he wants to destroy their ability to reconstitute it. What does that mean? That means we want to stop them from being able to build more missiles. That means factories.
I believe one other thing on that list, no nuclear weapons ever. How can they go after that program from a military perspective, especially just from the air?
No new nukes. This is going to be the hardest hill for them to climb. Why? Because a lot of the nuclear sites have already been attacked, and now they're buried under rubble. But there's still equipment there. There's still capabilities there. So we'll have to reattack those with exceptionally powerful weapon systems, of which we only have a few. So that's part one. Part two is other abilities to reconstitute that. This is more factories. This is more deeper into the supply chain. That's got to be found. It's got to be identified, targeted, and then finally struck.
Colonel Steve Warren, thank you very much. It's been invaluable to have you with us these few days. We appreciate your time. Well, as the conflict enters its fifth day, both sides show no signs of letting up their attacks on the Middle East. NBC News international correspondent Richard Engel is on the ground in Tel Aviv, Israel, with the latest. Richard, good morning.
Both U.S. and Israeli officials say this war is set to intensify even further. While here in Israel, some Americans today boarded buses heading for the border.
The U.S. and Israel are obliterating Iran's military and targeting its leaders this morning as the war continues to expand.
As President Trump said, more and larger waves are coming. We are just getting started. We are accelerating, not decelerating.
Israel launching dozens of airstrikes in Lebanon, targeting the Iranian-backed militia Hezbollah after it fired at Israel. Iran is continuing its strategy of firing missiles and cheap explosive drones across the Middle East and beyond, trying to widen the war and increase its cost. With new strikes this morning on an oil facility in the UAE, an explosion and fire near the U.S. consulate in Dubai, launching more missiles at Tel Aviv. So who is running Iran? Israel destroyed a building in the city of Qom, where clerics were expected to choose a new supreme leader to replace Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, killed by the U.S. and Israel. Iran says the clerics weren't inside, but meeting remotely. The late Ayatollah's son has reportedly emerged as a leading candidate, according to the New York Times, citing 3 Iranian officials familiar with deliberations. President Trump said some Iranian officials his administration was hoping could take over have been killed in the war.
I guess the worst case would be we do this and then somebody takes over who's as bad as the previous person, right? That could happen.
As the Pentagon released images of 4 of the at least 6 American service members killed so far.
I managed to speak to some Iranians inside Iran, and that's quite difficult. Communications are extraordinarily limited. And he said that some people in the country do support this military action against the clerical regime. But he said that people are too frightened to go out into the streets because the government has made it absolutely clear that if anyone does anything to challenge the system, they'll be shot on sight.
All right, Richard, thank you. There's much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now. Could a simple cell phone hold the key to a breakthrough in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie? We have got the latest leads from Arizona after this.
First, though, the votes are in across a pair of states that held primaries, including Texas, where a firebrand Democrat is hoping to bring a little blue to the Lone Star State's D.C. delegation. We've got the results next. Back now with the first primary results of this year's midterm elections. Voters went to the polls in Texas and North Carolina on Tuesday, 2 states that could help determine control of the Senate this fall. NBC's chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles has more from Washington. Ryan, good morning.
This first primary of the midterm calendar gives us a real sense of where the battle is headed, with enthusiastic Democrats turning out the vote and President Trump once again looming large over the Republican contests. This morning, legal chaos in Texas's elections. After fears that some voters went to the wrong polling places, some locations were ordered to stay open late. But then that was overturned by the Texas Supreme Court, leaving votes cast after 7 p.m. local time in limbo. It's a sign of how hotly contested these races are, including the Democratic Senate primary. NBC News projecting that State Representative James Tallarico has defeated Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett.
This is truly a campaign of, by, and for the people.
The victory setting up a Texas-sized showdown this November in the Lone Star State, as Democrats try to flip a statewide seat there for the first time in 3 decades. The Republican Senate primary is heading toward a bruising runoff in May, with incumbent Senator John Cornyn fighting for his political survival against State Attorney General Ken Paxton, after neither candidate won a majority of the vote. Cornyn taking aim at Paxton, who was impeached but later acquitted by the state Senate of bribery and corruption charges in 2023.
I refuse to allow a flawed, self-centered, and shameless candidate like Ken Paxton risk everything.
Paxton firing back.
John Cornyn has failed us time and time again.
And a stunner on the House side, with Republican Dan Crenshaw, the only Texas GOP House incumbent who did not have President Trump's endorsement, losing his race. In North Carolina, another critical race taking shape. The state's former Democratic governor, Roy Cooper, clinching his party's nomination overnight, facing former Republican National Committee Chair Michael Whatley, who was endorsed by President Trump. Another race heavily influenced by the president. And while we're still several months out from the general election, Democrats I spoke to were pleased with the incredible voter turnout in their primaries last night. For instance, in Texas, with competitive races on both sides of the ballot, more Democrats voted yesterday than did Republicans, which is rare for that red state. But Republicans still feel confident they can hold the Senate because they currently control the majority of the seats up for re-election this cycle.
All right, thanks, Ryan.
Let's turn now to the search for Nancy Guthrie. Today marks 32 days since the mother of Today co-anchor Savannah Guthrie vanished from her home in Arizona. And this morning, investigators are revealing more about another way that they may be trying to track down the suspect. NBC News correspondent Liz Kreutz joins us from Tucson with the latest.
Well, hey there. We've talked a lot about how physical DNA is something that investigators are using to try to identify that masked man who showed up at Nancy's home. But another type of forensics can also be used, and that is digital forensics. This is technology that was helpful in the Bryan Kohberger case, and the sheriff tells us it's something they're also looking into here.
32 days into the search for Nancy Guthrie, investigators are still poring over thousands of tips. But could the missing piece of evidence simply be the suspect's cell phone?
Think of treating your phones, your cameras, your computers as a crime scene. We dig in to uncover the truth.
Heather Barnhart is a digital forensics expert who worked on the Bryan Kohberger investigation. She helped build the case against him by tracking his cell phone data on the route between his home and the scene of the murders. She says it's likely the person who took Nancy Guthrie also left a digital footprint.
How do you think digital forensics will be able to be used in this Nancy Guthrie case?
Think about the digital traces that we leave behind with every single thing we do every day. Your phone is constantly pinging cell towers. Even if you turn it off, that creates a period of interest. So once a person of interest is identified, the fact that their phone is no longer pinging any tower is of interest. Even if you're out on the street in front of my house, chances are good that your phone will ping my Wi-Fi. And some people's routers will actually track devices that were potentially connected.
Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos tells us his team has been looking into cell phone data.
Has cell tower data information provided any clues to where the suspect could have been in the neighborhood?
I think the cell data towers have helped us in eliminating people and looking at things and different things. And there's still a lot of that data that needs to be looked at.
But Barnhart says sussing out these leads takes time.
I feel like investigators have such a tough job with this, but they're really trying to find a needle in a haystack, and it's not easy. But once they find one thread, the entire case will unravel.
And in that interview with the sheriff, we also asked him about the timing of those surveillance images. Despite what some law enforcement sources have said, he maintains that investigators still cannot say definitively that one of those images was taken on an earlier date prior to the abduction. But he does say that he believes it is the same person in all of those images. Back to you.
All right, Liz Kreutz, thank you. Coming up, we are heading back overseas with a sobering look at conditions inside Iran in the midst of war.
How the innocent living there are coping with the uncertainty and the new reality next.
We are back with more on the war unfolding in the Middle East. The United States and Israel are stepping up attacks on Iran this morning as American lawmakers are told to expect an overwhelming wave of strikes in the coming days. The strikes have killed more than 1,000 Iranians, according to a state-affiliated news outlet.
The conflict is impacting the economy worldwide. Gas prices rose higher overnight. Stocks on Wall Street slid down yesterday as markets around the world react to the conflict.
We have NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans here to talk through this fallout that we're seeing. Christine, good morning. Let's start on gas and oil prices.
Sure.
As you've been very smartly explaining to us, this all has to do with the Strait of Hormuz, and Iran says it has complete control of this area that so much of the world's gas and oil passes through. But President Trump did now say that the U.S. Navy could start escorting tankers through that waterway. How are things looking right now? Does it seem like that process is going to happen or has started?
Yeah, so we don't know if it's happened and exactly what the mechanics of that would be. It's been decades since the U.S. has done anything like that. But just the mere suggestion on Truth Social, the president on social media saying that both the United States would offer risk insurance to these shippers that are worried about losing their insurance because insurance companies don't want to insure them as they're going through a Strait of Hormuz when the Iranians are saying we're going to blow you up. And then also this idea of a naval escort. You're seeing the strait there. Those red dots, those red marks, those are all ships. And you can see they are just kind of parked there. Typically you have, I think, 80 or so that go through that narrow strait, and they go into Iranian waters to do that. And now they're just sitting there. I think maybe two. The New York Times reporting that two went through yesterday. So that is why you've got this concern about oil prices that drove oil prices up so much, because you have oil not moving in this critical waterway. You also have a natural gas facility in Qatar and a refinery, at least one refinery in Saudi Arabia, that are offline because of Iranian drone attacks. So now you've got the question of moving oil products and then also producing oil products. So that's why you had oil prices up so much. They've kind of like paused here right now. And gas prices, that's a really big part of the story, guys. Gas prices up another 9 cents last night, almost $3.20 a gallon. Now you're higher than a week ago, higher than a year ago. And looks like those gas prices will continue up, guys.
No doubt Wall Street's watching that as it watches just everything else happening around that region and around the globe. And we have seen, no surprise, the stocks rattled by some of these escalations over the last few days. What are you expecting today?
You know, stocks trying to find their footing, I would say, after a tough day yesterday. The last couple of days, I've been really watching the stock market action. And I'll say, while yesterday was definitely a down day, especially for the NASDAQ, more than 1% move on the NASDAQ, those other major averages, they did find buyers. They came off their lows. So that was encouraging to me. At one point, at this time yesterday, you had the Dow down 1,200 points. To close down just 400 shows you that there was some enthusiasm when stocks went down. You started finding some buyers. I think anything could happen here today. That's why I'm being careful about forecasting too much, because there are a lot of unknowns in this conflict. It is still an expanding conflict. There don't appear to be many off-ramps. The Iranians have all kinds of cheap and deadly drones that could, God forbid, cause more loss of property or loss of life. So just watching here, I think this is a tender moment.
What's the broader economic impact, Christine, that consumers are going to feel here at home?
I think the big issue here is, will there be an inflation problem? The last time we saw gas prices jump this much was after Russia invaded Ukraine, in the weeks after Russia invaded Ukraine back in 2022. And remember, that's when you saw inflation rise dramatically, and you saw gas prices hit $5. I'm not forecasting that. I'm just saying the last time we saw such a quick and violent move in gas prices was that corollary. And we'll really want to watch. If you have an inflation problem that starts to kick up, then you have a Federal Reserve that's less likely to trim interest rates, which a lot of people were hoping for lower interest rates, lower mortgage rates this year. So if you have higher gas prices, higher energy prices, higher inflation, and higher rates, that's something that all households will feel, and that can slow an economy overall. Again, I'm not forecasting that. I'm just saying suddenly we're in this moment where a few weeks ago we were talking about gas prices declining and an inflation story that was getting better. And now you have a major international conflict with lots of unknowns sort of muddying that picture.
All right, Christine Romans, thank you so much.
Let's now get to the part of the story that has been especially hard to report on, and that's what's going on inside Iran. The country has been under internet blackouts for much of the war, but we do know in Tehran schools are closed and some families are trying to leave the city as those airstrikes continue, and a heavy security presence keeps residents on edge.
Meanwhile, of course, as we've been reporting, the country has postponed a 3-day funeral ceremony for Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, which was due to start this evening, all as some in the country mourn and others celebrate his death.
NBC News national correspondent Yasmin Vasugian joins us now here at the desk to talk more about this. As we saw there, we have seen some public displays of support for the regime, and we know many others oppose it. It's hard to get information out, but just what are you hearing about the mood right now in Iran, in Tehran?
People are terrified. as you mentioned, there is a near internet blackout. The only communication that Iranians are getting really are on their cell phones from government officials, essentially telling them to stay inside, or you will see the consequences of coming out if, in fact, you want to rise up against the government, as the President Trump, that is, has called for, along with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. There is also a sense of uncertainty, as you can imagine, right? Because this is right now an air war and it is a water war. And no regime change has come in this world's history, in global history, not even in Libya, by air, right? There needs to be ground troops in order to achieve regime change. And right now it seems as if the United States is dependent on the Iranians to be their own ground troops up against a brutal Revolutionary Guard, who, by the way, is still very much in control. And the Iranians understand that, especially now that they're saying that there's a potential successor for Khamenei. In the New York Times reporting it could be his son, which we had known about for quite some time, according to 3 Iranian officials. But they are unarmed, the Iranians. They don't have a way to fight the Revolutionary Guard. They are afraid their country will be destroyed in the interim before they can even see regime change. But they are terrified. They're hopeful, right? There is hope, and I've spoken to activists on the ground who are trying to organize. But again, with the internet blackout, it is difficult to organize around what to do next, and then who to look to for guidance, right? So if we do this, is there backup? Right now, they understand that there is air backup. They understand that there's backup from the waterways. But are you coming in to help us? Or are we all kind of going on a suicidal mission to change the regime with the possibility of nothing around the corner? And that is how they are feeling. I think it's hard for them to reconcile these feelings, because in the one hand, many of them wanted to see Khamenei gone. And listen, it is a split screen. And as you saw some of those images, there's a 40-day period of mourning inside Tehran. So people will be mourning his death and memorializing him. Some of them are there on their own accord. Some of them, not. But there will be thousands of Iranians mourning his death. But there are a lot of Iranians that are happy to move on from this regime. They just do not understand how to do it with what seems to be a lack of a plan right now.
We mentioned internet blackouts, people trying to leave Tehran, traffic jams in the process of doing so, and then just knowing that there is a constant threat of bombing, including that the Secretary of Defense says is only going to intensify. What is everyday life like? What are they telling you about what it's like to just be there?
Joe talked about how schools are closed. People aren't going to work. Stores are open intermittently to get food. I think you guys have talked about on the show, and I've reported previously about the water shortages that Iran was already facing. There's an infrastructure collapse. I mean, listen, Iran is for all intents and purposes, a thriving country, right? It is a metropolis, Tehran, right? You can go and buy, when things are normal, fancy bags and nice jewelry. And, for those people that haven't necessarily been there, I don't think they understand that about this country, right? There is a robust working class. There is a robust upper class. There's socioeconomic differences. But right now, life is not happening. People are scared and they are remaining inside their homes because they don't want to die and they don't know what is around the corner. So life is not lifing, to answer your question.
Yasmin, we appreciate you coming
sure
on to talk with us and all the reporting you've been doing over these last several
days. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.